let's talk about emotional work. Yay, right? If you're anything like me, this is what brought you here in the first place. Sort of a inability, essentially, to presence, to be present, and to really be with some of the heavier emotions. And today I want to touch on a map of the terrain, which is not to be confused for the terrain because we're talking about something that is purely energetic. But there is a map that I found really helpful, and the map really consists of two submaps, which is the Vedantic path and the Tantric path. I find that they beautifully come together in this approach that I'm about to describe now. So I will assume in this video that you're already familiar with both, at least have some background knowledge about Tantra and Advaita Vedanta. And so starting with Advaita Vedanta and the self-inquiry, if you are not familiar, that I do recommend you check out an introduction video to what that is, and I will upload one probably after this video. So stay tuned and subscribe for more. Essentially, what self-inquiry is that we stay and open ourselves to the question of who am I? And very quickly, that might bring up a lot of thoughts, and then we go beyond these thoughts. At some point, that is really the shift. At some point, we recognize that there's a bunch of thoughts, and the thoughts, no thought, is who I really am. And so as this opening happens, we open to the big self, capital S self, that which is beyond thoughts and concepts. And it's not something that can be um, described perfectly, nor communicated clearly in language. It is something that is somatically felt. So when you touch it, something opens up. You will know, and essentially that is a large part of what spiritual awakening is all about. So how does this relate to emotional work? Well, we can apply a similar but slightly tweaked version of that prompt to whenever we find ourselves in process, working with some parts or tricky emotions bubbling to the surface. And when we feel caught, being unable to allow the stagnant energy to move through us, then we might ask, who is this appearing for? So if I'm stuck in rage and I'm really having a difficult time with it, I might ask myself, who is really upset? Who has really been hurt? Who? And again, this your mileage may vary depending on how well versed you are with self-inquiry and how far this gradual opening has already shifted you into the more awake, vast space of yourself. And that is, if you do have access to awake awareness, then often what happens is that indeed this spaciousness begins to flood our system. We feel like there's more space for ourselves and for all of emotions, and there is an unblending in IFS terms from the parts. So we no longer identify with the contracted small self that's stuck suffering right now. We know ourselves as that which is beyond all of it, which already by itself creates tremendous relief. But that's not where this map ends, because now, with this awake ground, knowing ourselves as awake awareness, being grounded in the truth of our being, we can actually, so it's sort of like we're moving away from, we first turn away from this experience that's happening at the moment to glimpse our true nature, who we really are. Once we have done that, we can actually begin to turn back around to meet whatever was arising and still is, because it's all happening in the present moment, obviously. We can begin to turn around and become deeply intimate with it, which is the tantric approach, which is, as Rupert Spira calls it, kissing the toad. Um, as per the story where the toad turns into the prince once kissed. And there's something very similar that happens here. This is why it's such an apt analogy that I'm keen to bring in, because as we turn back around and we get really intimate with a part and we allow that to blossom and open, and the part feels that welcoming and is allowed to show itself fully and be fully experienced and felt and known, something else entirely begins to open and shift and move, and whatever block we were experiencing a moment ago, um, slowly or very fast indeed begins to dissolve and move, and we're back in flow. There might be some pain, but not suffering. Some of that pain present at the moment of emotional release is actually deeply enjoyable. It might sound paradoxical if you haven't consciously experienced it, but it is deeply pleasurable, even blissful, to release and liberate stuck emotions in our body, even if as they liberate and they literally move through our body, there might be some pain associated with it. It's sort of like a fire that that liberates, a liberating kind of fire that burns and yet has a flavor of bliss and ecstasy. So why is this useful? Why is this skillful even to combine those two approaches? Well, I want to say that first of all, if we mention the pitfalls of each, because each teaching, each map can be misinterpreted. So with the tantric approach, it's very easy to only focus on the parts and really be intimate with them to the point of actually losing ourselves, forgetting who we are, forgetting who and what we really are, and losing that ground of awake awareness that allows the energy to move unobstructedly. We might lose ourselves in the story of a part, in the narrative, in the story that helps us, or rather, well, it doesn't help us. It helps us stay stuck. It helps us in the sense that we're stuck with a part and we don't move beyond it. So in a sense, that's what a part wants. But it comes from a kind of confusion. The part and our mind keeps generating the story that keeps fueling the feeling and the emotion, but there is no escape valve. There is no liberation. We're just making laps around the same stagnant energy that kind of moves. So that's the sort of pleasurable aspect of it that we can get. It's very easy to get stuck in, but it never reaches a release. It never culminates in liberation. And so that is the pitfall of the tantric approach. However, the pitfall of the Vedantic approach equally much can lead something that is not very much helpful, which is the famous spiritual bypass. We might be going through grief or anger or whatever other difficult emotion, and rather than fully feeling it and being with our parts that essentially are all good, no emotion is bad. We might label it as negative or difficult, but they're all made of the same love and bliss when fully allowed to be felt unobstructed. And certainly all of our parts, as per Dick Schwartz's title of his latest book, No Bad Parts, that's precisely it. There are no bad parts. All parts are good, and they're like sweet, innocent parts of ourselves that really just want to be held and met and presenced and welcomed. So as we tip over into the spiritual bypass, which is the risk of going too far into the Vedantic um, side of things, is that we don't come close. We stay detached. We stay up here, and there might even be a bit of a Zen stink that nothing is real, nothing of this world is real. So why bother with it? Why feel that which is unreal? And whereas everything is emptiness arising as form, just as per the Heart Sutra, form is emptiness. and emptiness is form. So that is this classic bypass, because just because something is inherently empty and its nature is emptiness, and perhaps you could even call it unreal, because the only truth is the light of being. However, it is it is real in the sense that it is appearing and it is here, longing for love. What it could be called is to be an illusion, because an illusion is not what it appears to be. So we might feel ourselves to be a separate self, struggling and suffering even, and whereas it is not true, but it is nevertheless real for the person that suffers. So a skillful means of navigating this terrain would be to anchor ourselves in the awake awareness, knowing who we really are, and remembering our boundless nature that is always free, always has been, always will be, cannot be other than vast, open, liberated. And from that space of awareness, turn back around into the contents of our experience that is made of that very same essence. It's made of that awareness itself. It's made out of loving awareness. And then meet all of our parts that long for love and safety and presence from that awake ground, which creates a very extremely potent cocktail of love and liberation. So I wish you fruition with this technique. Let me know if you have any questions or how you experience this in your own personal experience. And let me know what you would like me to talk about next.